Brothers and sisters, I want to muse with you today on the whole idea of justice. Justice in the Bible. What does it mean to say that God is just? What does it mean to think about the justice of God? It's one of the things because we're often tempted to put God's justice up against his mercy. And you get this, sometimes you see this in some popular Catholic belief, or it can be even temptations that we face to try to almost have this kind of schizophrenic God, the God of justice, as if he's a conflict within himself between his mercy and his justice, as if, he has to look to his mercy to calm down his justice, or whatever it may be. We might not have thought out well enough or even understand, well, what does the Bible mean by God's justice? And how does that relate to mercy? The great saints, Saint Therese of Lisieux and Saint Faustina, it was part of their journey to wrestle with these two kind of, you could say, qualities or virtues of God, if we could say it in a very general sense. As if they were up against each other, but in their own spiritual life, they came to see in a really masterful way and communicated this to us. To see that, like St. Therese would say, justice and mercy, they're really two sides of the same coin. And in fact, when God works with mercy, his justice is, you could say, flavored with his mercy, or justice and mercy embrace, they kiss, they're one. And so how could we understand this? Well, first of all, maybe we need to be careful of not transposing or transferring to our understanding of divine justice a strictly human or philosophical or concept of justice that we might typically attribute to us as humans in society, in the sense that justice being that virtue where we give to the other person what is rendered them. So a just act is an act that respects the good of the other person and doesn't take away from their goods, or doesn't take away from what should be rendered to them. Now, what about justice in the Bible? First of all, when we look at justice in the Bible in terms of us, we're looking at it in terms of the question of faith, that the just man is the one who stands in faith, first of all, before God, and gives to God all his love and his life in the right way. God, in other words, someone stands in right relationship to God. And so that's why we speak about faith justifying, or faith putting one in right relationship with God, and then flowing from that, then because of one's faith and one's relationship with God, that one will render and does the right thing for one's neighbor. But what about God? Like, how does the Bible speak about God's justice? Well, it follows on in terms of a faithfulness as well. The biblical understanding of God's justice is that God is faithful to his plan of salvation. He is faithful and consistent with his plan to save, with his whole operation of mercy. And this is where justice and mercy is so clearly linked, because when God is just, he's also merciful. Because if we see justice in the biblical sense and how the church teaches it, that it is God's faithfulness to really his plan of salvation, then it's a sort of kind of a paradox, maybe, because we want to innately put justice up against mercy. But here we see how, no, they're totally in harmony. Because God's plan is to save us, is to be merciful to us. And so in that sense, God is being just as well when he is being merciful, when he is saving us. So as my professor said recently, Father Bonino, great theologian, Dominican theologian, Henry Angelicum, and he said, well, when God is just, he's just to give grace. And so I just want to quote you here, the prophet Isaiah. So And this brings out this point that justice means to give grace in that sense on God's part. When God is just, he's being merciful in giving grace. And this is a bit counterintuitive because of our more human understandings of justice. But we have to try and conform our mind to the Bible, right? And to the biblical worldview. And so this is what Isaiah says. The Lord waits with trust to give you grace. And for this reason, he arises to have mercy on you, for the Lord is a just God. So in other words, Isaiah is saying, because the Lord is a just God, he will arise to give mercy on you and to give you grace. And so part of the victorious actions by which God manifests himself in history, the history of Israel, is his fidelity to his promises, or what we might call the justices of the Lord. So there you go, justice and mercy.